Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Mrs. Venti. Today's we're looking at equations, exercise 4, specifically how to solve quadratic equations. Now today's exercise is more of a revision of what you know from grade 10, which means that, okay, we have been looking at different ways of solving a quadratic equation. You know that a quadratic equation looks like this. You have ax squared plus bx plus c. And in grade 10, so it's an equation meaning it's equal to 0. In grade 10, you've learned to factorize, and you have two brackets equals 0, and then we basically solve it here to get x equals this, or whatever's in this bracket. We're going to say, sorry, let me erase this. Instead, what we'll say over here is we'll say something like bracket equals 0 or bracket equals 0, and then you solve for x. This is from grade 10, right? You know how to do that. In grade 11, you learn two more methods of solving equations. The one is called completing the square, and when we complete the square, what we're doing is we're going to say your equation, whatever it is, plus c minus c. This portion is what's new when it comes to completing the square, equals 0. The second method that we teach you in grade 11, which technically ends up being the third way of solving quadratic equations, is, so over here is where grade 11 you have new knowledge or new methodologies. Complete the square, and you learn how to use what is it called, the not the quadratic equation, it is called quadratic formula. So these are the three methods of completing the square. Today's exercise is going to be grade 10 work, so we are basically just going to use old-fashioned grade 10 stuff that you should be very familiar with. So let's go through these exercises. I'm going to go quickly with the aim of just reviewing what you already know. Question A says x squared minus 5x equals 6. So over here what we're going to do is you're going to put your trinomial on one side. Let's go with orange. Okay, and we are going to say, okay, x squared minus 5x, and on this, sorry, I wanted an orange pen here. We're going to say minus 6 is equal to 0 because we said minus 6 on both sides, right? Now that we have that, you are going to do your two brackets, and you are going to say your factors are x and x, and then your factors of 6 are going to be 6 and 1, 2 and 3. So 2 and 3 gives me 5. 6 and 1 also gives me 5. Okay, so if I did 2 and 3, my other option would be x and 6, x and 1 equals 0. Now I'm just thinking out loud here. Let's solve both of them. So I want negative 6 and negative 5. So minus 3 minus 2 gives me minus 5, but that ends up giving me positive 6. So if I say minus 2 minus 3, I end up with plus 6, so this is not a valid option. So I get minus 5x, but plus 6. That's wrong. So it has to be minus 6 plus 1 gives me minus 5. So minus 6 plus 1 gives me minus 5x, and minus 6 times plus 1 gives me minus 6. This is the correct answer. Therefore, based on the solution, I can now say x minus 6 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0, x equals positive 6, or x equals negative 1. Those are my solutions. I need to point out that because I have an exponent 2, I need to have two answers for x. Okay, a quadratic formula has got two answers for x. If I attempted to sketch this, which I like to do when I'm explaining things to you so that you can see how things are connected. This is a quadratic equation. My A is positive, which means it's a smiley face. So automatically, let's go blue. Because it's positive, I know it's a smiley face. And then these two are going to be my intercepts. So I'm intercepting at x equals 6 and at x equals -1. Those are my intercepts. So my smiley face would look something like that. Now, this is my y-intercept, which means that it cuts the y-intercept at -6. And that would be more or less my graph. Not very accurate, but the correct shape with the correct intercepts. Okay, let's do question B. Question B says we have x squared equals x. Now, there is a temptation over here. What I see, a very normal mistake that I see is people like to say, okay, I've got an x on both sides. I'm going to divide by x, which means that these two cancel out, becomes 1, this one and one of those cancel out, and therefore I say x equals 1. This answer is absolutely wrong. You are not allowed to do that. And the reason for this is because I said to you, you have x to the power of 2, which means that you have to have 2 answers for x. You cannot have only one x. You cannot eliminate an x. Okay? So instead of doing that, let's do this correctly. We are going to say question B is x squared is equal to x. What do? We take the x over, so we say minus x on both sides, which means I have x squared minus x is equal to 0. Good. Now I can take out my highest common factor, which is going to be x. So if I take x out, I am left with, in the bracket, x minus 1, and that's equal to 0. So now I've got 2 items with x's multiplied by each other equals 0. So I can do my 2 branches and I can say x equals 0 or x minus 1 equals 0, which means that my first answer is x is 0 and my second answer is going to be x. Now I don't know why my pen is acting funny. X equals positive 1. Again, if we attempted to sketch this, this is a smiley face. So we have a positive graph. I know it looks like that. My x-intercepts is going to be at 0 and at x is 1. So, and I do not have a y-intercept, or my y-intercept is going to be at that 0 as well. So that's going to look like something like that. Okay, dokes. Let's do question C. Question C says negative x squared minus 13x is equal to 12. Okay, we've got options here. I'm going to do both so that you can see what they look like. Okay, so we've got options. Option number 1 is to take everything to the left hand side, which is what most of you like to do because you've been programmed to do that. So that means I say minus 12 on both sides, and I'm left with minus x squared minus 13x minus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, once I've got that, I want to get rid of all the minus signs, so I multiply everything by -1 on both sides, which means I have x squared plus 13x plus 12 is equal to 0. That is option 1. If we do the same thing using option 2, I could say negative x squared minus 13x equals 12, and what we did in option 1 was we took everything to the left. Now I can take everything to the right, meaning that I'm going to add those two. So now I'm left with 0 is equal to positive x squared plus 13x plus 12. This is exactly the same thing. Whether it's on the left hand side or the right hand side of the equal sign, it doesn't matter. It's exactly the same. Okay, so now that these two are the same, let's proceed. That's the only part where it looks different. Now we can proceed and we can say, okay, let's factorize. So factors of x is x and x. Factors of 12. So factors of 12 is going to be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, right? I want 13. 1 and 12 is the set that gives me 13. 2 and 6 gives me 8. 4 and 3 gives me 7. So 13, I'm going to go with 1 and 12. I want plus 13 plus 12, so add both equals 0. This means that x plus 1 equals 0, or x plus 12 equals 0. So x equals negative 1, or x equals negative 12. If I attempted to sketch this, I would start with a smiley face. Now, why am I doing a smiley drawing? Because x squared is positive here. So it's at this point where I do my factorization. So don't look at this and be tempted to draw a frowny face graph. Okay, so we are going to draw a smiley face graph, and we are going to cut our intercepts in x is negative 1, x is negative 12, which, okay, let's extend this line here. We can make negative 12 there and negative 1 here, and our y-intercept is y is positive 12. So it is a frowny face graph. Okay, positive 12. Does that make sense? X is negative 12, x is, those are my intercepts, and then no, it is a smiley face. It's going to cut like that and then go up and cut here somewhere at x is 12. Okay, doke. So that is question C. Let's do the next one. So I am just going to write the equation for you. Question D says 4x squared is equal to 36x minus 32. Again, you've got two options. The first option would be to take everything to one side, which is fine. The second option is to take out the highest common factor, which is also fine. So let's do the more uncommon thing first, and we are going to take out the highest common factor, which is 4, meaning that I'm going to divide everything by 4. Okay, so that means that I have x squared is equal to 36 divided by 4 is 9x, and 32 divided by 4 is 8. Okay, now that I have that, I take everything to one side. Now, because this is positive, I'm going to take everything that way because I want a positive x squared. Okay, so that means I have x squared minus 9x plus 8 is equal to 0. Okay, now I can do my two brackets, and that equals 0. I have x here and x here. Factors of 8 are going to be 1 and 8, which gives me 9. That's what I want, right? 1 and 8 gives me 9. Negative 1, negative 8 gives me negative 9, and negative 1 times negative 8 gives me positive 8. So that works. Minus 1, minus 8. This means that x minus 1 equals 0, or x minus 8 equals 0. So x equals 1 or x equals 8. Graphing it, I have intercept at 1 and an intercept at 8, and y-intercept at positive 8 up here somewhere. And my graph would look something like this. Okay, that's question D. Let's do question E. So question E looks like this, with two brackets. X minus 2 multiplied by x plus 3, and that is equal to 14. Don't make the mistake of saying bracket 1 equals 14 or bracket 2 equals 14, because that's not true, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to expand the brackets, and you're going to say x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 6. So what I did here was I did FOIL, and then I'm also going to take this over in one step. You can do it in two, so it becomes minus 14, and that is equal to 0. Now I am going to add like terms, so x squared, 3x minus 2x is plus 1x, minus 16 minus 14 is minus 20, and that is equal to 0. Now I factorize 2 brackets equals 0, x and x. Factors of 20 that give me 1. Factors of 20 is 1 and 20, 2 and 10. 3 doesn't work. 4 times 5 get me to 1. 4 and 5 is the closest to get me to 1. So I want a positive 1, so that's going to be plus 5 minus 4, and that gives me plus 1, and it also gives me minus 20. So x plus 5 equals 0, or x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals negative 5, or x equals positive 4. If I attempted to sketch this, the sketch would look like this. So we have our, let's go down more, our graph looks like that, and our intercepts is going to be at negative 5 and positive 4, and our y-intercept is going to be at negative 20, and our graph will look something like that. Not necessarily that this is the turning point, but anyway, it looks like that, assuming that it actually went through the points that I graphed. Ha ha ha. Okay, question F. Let's do F. So F is similar to E. 2 brackets, 2x plus 1, 3 minus x is equal to 6. So what do? We are going to do FOIL. So that gives me 2x times 3 is 6x. 2x times negative x is negative 2x squared. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times negative x is negative x. And then I bring this minus 6 over, and that equals 0. Now I'm going to add like terms, and I'm going to put them in the correct order. So it's minus 2x squared. 6x minus x is positive 5x. 3 minus 6 is minus 3, and that is equal to 0. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1 in order to get rid of this minus sign. So to do that, I get 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Now we want to factorize. So in order to do this factorization, I know that 2x and x must be factors of each other. Okay, now let's go back to what we did in grade 10. Our factors are 2x and x, and then our factors for 3 is just 1 and 3. So we've got two options. We can do 1 and 3, and our second option is going to be 2x and x, 3 and 1. So remember, what we do is we cross multiply. So we say these two multiplied, 2x times 3 gives me 6x, and these two multiplied, x times 1 is 1x, and then I add or subtract. So if I add them, I get 7x, or if I subtract them, I get 5x. Okay, which is what I want. I want the 5x, but let's do the second one as well, just for practice. X times 3 is 3x, and 2x times 1 is 2x. And again, if I add or subtract, if I add, I get 5x. If I subtract, I get 1x. And again, there's the 5. So I've got two options to get that 5x, but I want a positive 3 in the end. So let's look at the signs. To get 5x, if I want negative 5x, I need negative 6 plus 1 gives me negative 5, which means that this must be negative and that must be positive. And then if I multiply this way, I get negative 3, which is wrong. I don't want negative 3, I want positive 3. So let's look at our second one. To get negative 5x, I need negative 2 and negative 3, which means both of them must be negative. And if I multiply this way, I get positive 3, which is correct. So this is my correct option, meaning that these are my brackets. I write this one here and I write that one there. So that becomes 2x minus 3 and x minus 1. All right, now I'm going to say 2x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. So 2x is equal to 3 and x is equal to 3 over 2, which is 1.5, or x is equal to 1. If I attempted to sketch this, it would be a graph that looks like this, where, remember, I'm doing a smiley face over here. So my intercepts are going to be x is 1 and x is 1.5, and my y-intercept is x is 3. So my graph is going to look something like this. Okay, that's F. Let's look at G. Okay, question G. G says x minus 1 is equal to 2. So let's do it wrong. You cannot say x equals 2 or x minus 1 equals 2. This is wrong. Okay, so do not do that. Let's do it correctly. We're going to say x minus 1 equals 2. So we're going to do two things. You're going to expand here and you're going to take the 2 over. So that becomes x squared minus x. One second. Okay, minus x. So we've multiplied the distributive property, and then minus 2 equals 0. Now 2 brackets, and we say that equals 0. X and x, 2 and 1, negative 2 plus 1. So x minus 2 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0, which means that x equals 2 or x equals negative 1. Again, if I sketch this, sketching isn't part of the assignment. I'm just doing it for you so that you can see. So if I sketch this, my x-intercepts are going to be at x is 2 and x is negative 1. My y-intercept is going to be at x is negative 2. And my graph is going to look like this. Okay, let me plug. Okay, let's look at question 16. Question 16 gives us options. There are two methods to do this. So our first method would be literally, what do you see? You see a difference of squares, right? So you can say difference of squares is solved as x minus 4, x plus 4, which means that x minus 4 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0. So x equals 4 or x equals negative 4. That's one option. Option 2, when you see x squared minus 16, again, difference of squares, what you can do is you can actually take the 16 over, which means you left with x squared is equal to positive 16, and then you square root both sides because they're both squares, which means that x is equal to plus minus 4. Notice that the answers are the same. So two methods to do a question like H. How do we sketch this? You have minus 4 and you have positive 4, and essentially your graph will look like this. Okay, let's do our next one. Question I. X squared minus 9. Similar to question H, you can do difference of squares. X squared equals 9, not minus 9. X squared equals 9. So you can do difference of squares by taking the 9 over, or you can do square root. So let's square root both sides. So x is equal to plus minus 3, right? That is I. Let's look at J. J, x squared minus 6 is equal to 0. Now the question is, can you do difference of squares?